Hello. Are we on? Are we online?
We're online.
We're online. Actually, if you move your chair, otherwise we have to look at your chair the whole way through. Just thinking. We're trying to make it. We're trying to clean the space, as Dorothy would say.
I don't think we need that. I mean, especially it's built up on the table already.
Yeah, just thinking. So I'm Brian Edmiston. I'm professor of drama as education at Ohio State University in the United States. And sitting beside me here is the amazing.
Thank you, Brian. I like it. Yes.
We're trying to lighten things up here. Come on, it's 5.
It's 5. You know,
it's 4:30. Come on.
My name's Iona Towler-Evans, and do you want me to say a bit more now?
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
the first time I encountered Dorothy's work really was through the collected writings by Cecily O'Neill, and it really changed the way that I saw children, and it certainly changed the way I saw teaching, and it changed the way I saw learning. So which was pretty amazing publication, and of course it just changed the way I saw them and saw myself in that learning experience. I think that, and I was very fortunate to be mentored by Dorothy for over 20 years at least, where she helped enormously with my planning and my thinking. I'm so grateful for that, really. Later, I've been a classroom teacher most of my life, teaching English and drama. And later, thanks to the work of Luke Abbott, I was one of the Mantle of the Expert members nationally, and of course, sometimes internationally. He was so innovative. He made such a difference to Dorothy's work. And it's just been the influence that he has been enormous. I'd like to pay tribute to that.
So I often say when I'm in classrooms with children that I have a funny accent, because, and of course, Iona does too, because she's from Wales and I'm from Ireland.
This is what connects us.
This is what connects us. We're the Celtic fringe along with Cecily. And so I grew up in Northern Ireland, and I was an English teacher and then English and head of drama here in England for 6 years. And then I went to Newcastle and worked with Dorothy for my master's degree. And that was, as with Iona, that was transformational for me, both as a teacher and as a person. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't gone on that course. And then I went off to Ohio State University, and I was able to be on a committee that brought Cecily, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Cecily O'Neill, who came to Ohio and was on the faculty there. And she actually chaired my doctoral dissertation. So I had 2 amazing educators that I've worked with so closely, and of course with Luke as well.
Yeah.
20 years ago when I met Iona, I was here, spent a year and on sabbatical, and I'd known Luke before, and we worked together for a year. So those, some of the formative experiences for me as to why I'm here. Back in the United States, I then went and worked in the classroom again full-time as a primary teacher, elementary teacher, and I'm now back as a professor of education, drama as education. But like Iona, I spend as much time as I can in classrooms, and this past 18 months has been very difficult for so many of us, I'm sure. I know for us, it's been difficult, and I just 2 weeks ago I was in the classroom for the first time with children. It was glorious. So one of the reasons I'm here flown across the United States to be here is I want to be with people again who are passionate about this work, and I'm so glad that we can be here.
Absolutely.
So that's probably enough of an.
I think that's enough of an introduction. I was going to say I'm Welsh. You probably recognise that in my voice, and I think Wales at the moment is an invitation for Dorothy's work, because the curriculum is changing there and becoming more child focused and centred.
So the other thing I should mention is we've been working through the pandemic and before on a book that's going to come out next year. And today we're going to address some of the issues and aspects of drama's education that's in that book. And we're going to talk about several examples from our own teaching, two of which Dorothy worked with Iona on, so that we'll be coming to those, and see if I can start the. Keep talking among yourselves while I.
Yes, of course.
Going to say something else. Let's see. I'm trying to share screen. There we go. Ta-da! There it is. Can you see that? So that's the title of this is Humanizing Education with Dramatic Inquiry in dialogue with Dorothy Heathcote's Transformative Pedagogy. And that's really a description of our journey over the last 35, 40 years for me, and applying her pedagogy and extending it in our own work. So that's who we are. And we thought we'd begin with a quote from Dorothy.
Yes, which she says, you know, we must allow ourselves to be restless spirits, to be in the process of becoming.
So becoming what? And for us, we think at the heart of that is becoming more grown up. We're grown up as unique human beings. All of us are on journeys. We're all becoming, or we've stopped living, really. So the stories we're going to talk about are, in this case, not about our own journeys growing up as teachers, though we could indeed talk about that. We're going to talk about our work in classrooms with children. And as well as being more grown up as unique human beings, we're also always
in social relationships with other people. It's always we.
Everything is we for us. And as well, we get the next slide. It's not going. Where's it? There it is.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So not only with other people, but always with the world, and in all its richness and diversity. So that's what we mean by humanizing education, and it's what we believe Dorothy meant. And what's really important is that this goes beyond the idea of learning and teaching any official curriculum. It's much bigger than that, though of course it contains that. And I just love this slide. I think it's Dorothy talked about trees and growth and you know, it sort of captures
seeds.
Here we are as unique beings in relationship with others and with the world. So the scholar Michael Bakhtin, whom I've been writing about for a long time, he's central, I think, to understanding how we can become grown up in general. So as he says, to live means to participate in dialogue.
Yes, indeed. And
if we're going to dialogue, we ask questions, we heed, we respond, we agree, and so forth. And we're doing this through our whole life. With
his eyes, lips, hands, soul and spirit, with his whole body and deeds.
He invests his entire.
Are you? Excuse me. Are you sharing your PowerPoint?
Can you not see it?
No, we can't see it.
Oh, thank you for telling us. Help, somebody.
Yeah, you need to stop sharing and start again.
Oh, okay.
Shall we?
I've only been working on this for 2 years during the pandemic. It's still, I thought I'd got this sorted out. We forgot. Oh, right. Thank you so much, whoever that was, told us that this wasn't. Thank you, David.
Are we okay now, Iris?
Yes, you're okay.
So from the current slide,
please,
yeah?
that'd be great.
Okay.
So that's a quote from Viktor Frankl. Life is a quest for meaning. And if you put those two together, we've got dialogue is life. It's humanizing when we are making meaning about what it means to be human. So in this talk, we're going to allude to 4 big ideas about this as to how do you make meaning? What's the meaning about? We're making meaning about life and a sense of belonging to communities.
A sense of purpose on journeys of discovery.
A sense of sharing and creating stories, storying, as Cecily referred to this morning. And then transcending whoever we are, becoming as we become more grown up. So we'll come back to those 4 ideas. So the first one there we are, a picture of belonging to a humanizing community. It's not just any old community, it's not just any old group. We want to create humanizing communities in classrooms and connect them with the world. And here's a picture, not from one of our examples, but it's just from one of our teaching experiences.
Yes, I think this is one from Wales actually, and I think this does reflect something what Cecily said this morning actually about storying and about the children own the story. It's our story, it's their story.
So they're belonging not just to the community, but to the next idea of stories. They're creating a story, they're sharing their stories, they're interpreting stories, making sense of them.
And they're connecting with each other, of course. And in the
all
world,
of this is purposeful. And in the doing of the work, they're engaging with the community, with the stories. And stories that we're creating from our own lives, and of course, from the work that we're creating there, is a journey of discovering. And of course, we're always navigating problems, which in dramatic work, we can construct together that connect with the students. And all of this is about going beyond whoever you are as a unique human being in relationship with others and with the world. So that's humanizing education. That's the way that we define it. And just as a footnote from, I know the talk previous, the talk about leadership, humanizing doesn't mean it's not post-humanizing. It's inclusive of that as well. It's not an exclusion. So here we are. We thought you'd like to see a picture of Dorothy in the midst of very humanizing dialogue, not just with one person, but in a focus that's becoming about people working together, and they're inquiring into something, into what it means to be human in events that we may dramatize as if we're other people living elsewhere as we become more grown up. There we are. That's what humanizing education with dramatic inquiry means for us. So this term is one that I introduced about in 2010, and it's been, Viv Aitken's picked it up in New Zealand and it's a way of, I'm trying to get a overarching umbrella term to describe the different approaches that Dorothy developed. Of course, process drama that Cecily has written about so masterfully, and then the more complex approaches, which we'll look at 2 examples of each, a mantle and a commission. And we're not going to address scrolling role here, but of course that was addressed just earlier. So here we are in humanizing dialogue and dramatic inquiry. 2 big ideas here.
Yeah, but very big ideas. And with young people as colleagues, inquiring collaboratively into subject worlds as aspects of life, as if we are other people living elsewhere.
So here we are again, just to show you that. Now those last 2 pictures came, you may recognize it from the shoe factory that Dorothy did. And the previous, they're only taken a few minutes apart, but they're significantly different. Because what we're doing here is, we'd argue, is extending the reality of the classroom. So we're going back and forth with dramatic imagination between what is and what if we were here, and it's, here we are, what is, this is us, talking about what we're going to be doing, and within just a moment, it becomes, well, what if we were here? What if we are elsewhere? So there we are. That's what we're trying to do. So here's another quote from Dorothy.
And one of the principal ways in which schools could be humanized, motivated study of the real world and of humanity. And I think that reflects very much what Cecily said this morning when she said, education has to be about something worthwhile, not something you find the answer to on a phone. And I felt that reflected very much what Dorothy was saying here.
So things that are important are everything to do with the human condition. And as she says, also says here, all my ideas are rooted in the remarkable variations of human encounters. Cecily was asking me, where do you find your ideas? Well, look anywhere.
Yeah,
It's everywhere, because everything is worth studying. But of course, we're doing this, as Dorothy says, to ask this question: what sort of a society do we want? What are we creating here? And in classrooms, we've got a chance, as we've worked with students, to create our society. That's what we can do in classrooms, in schools. We can create the sort of world that we would like to be. And here's Dorothy again.
I want young people to be full members of society, to fully participate in society.
I'm not just sitting there, letting knowledge or learning happen to me. And the students are taking on responsibility, they're doing ethical concerns, they're being critical at times of questioning what's going on. And all of this is creating a micro society, a community in the classroom. As everybody's becoming more grown up in relationship to one another and with the world. And we wanted to we're going to get on to the examples in a second, but I wanted to quote from Jo Cox, who's a former member of Parliament.
Yes, and she said, and I think this is very much reflected in this work, we are far more united and have far more in common than that which divides us.
Isn't that the basis of everything we're doing, ideally, in schools? Every piece of work we're looking at commonality and not looking at the divisions, the humanity that connects us. Now, those of us who know who Jo Cox was know that she was murdered in the Brexit campaign, and it was a right-wing neo-Nazi sympathizer. That person went to school. That person was a child in a classroom sometime, and teachers worked with him. And I often think about everybody around us who's an adult has been in a school. We have a chance to make a difference. And her husband said, in response to the wonderful speech that he gave, he said, we must fight against the hatred that killed her, not against the people, not to dehumanize people, but to fight against the hatred. So in this work, we can, how are you going to do that? You can't do it by telling people, as again, Cecily said this morning, you can't tell people, oh, stop hating people, stop stereotyping them, stop. Dorothy's answer to this in this wonderful chapter in a book on anti-racist education said this.
We must attempt to foster a humanizing value system that inhibits the growth of that weed or oppression. We need to gradually and persistently and gradually build in a set of values honoring all of humankind.
We need to gradually and persistently build in a set of values honoring all of humankind. As Bea mentioned it in her talk, it's all about values. What do we value? What are we working for? What are we working toward? What does it mean to be human? And we have to look at the dark side as well as the light side of humanity. So let's have a look at some examples. These two mantles and two commissions. And so the first one's Baby on the Beach. And these four examples we chose these because they're united by a question that resonates with the Joe Cox quote. How might we best help people who are refugees or immigrants or anybody who's other than us? How might we make them feel at home in our community? And who is our community? Who's us? Who's the we that we want to work for? So in this wonderful mantle that Dorothy helped Iona plan, right?
I mean, she helped me plan this. It was a school in Birmingham, primary school, who were receiving newly arrived Somali refugee children into their community, and wanted to find a way and wanted to use the work I was doing to lead on this, to really help them, I suppose, feel at home in the school and feel at home in the country.
And
really.
these 5 and 6 year old, the majority in the class were
Yes, I'd say
arrived.
yeah. About 70%.
And the others were British born. Right?
Yeah.
So the first thing you were doing was creating. It was like you were aware of who they were.
Well,
right?
that's right. I was aware of who they were. I knew that they'd lived by the sea. They'd probably travelled across the sea.
Yeah.
They'd been on a journey.
So you were open to who they were, not who you would want them to be. They're not being pushed into some curriculum.
No, it
right?
was their curriculum of life, if you like.
Yeah.
You know, this is what we were looking at. And I think during that planning event with Dorothy, I think I learned so much about how we sometimes don't connect with children as to where they are and who they are.
And we both really love this quote, don't we? About we must be open to the young people as they really are.
As they really are. And that's what struck me about this particular project.
I love the way that you planned this, and these are not the children, but we will see them in a minute. But they live by the sea, so Dorothy suggests, well, let's create a fictionalized community. We're in Birmingham here, or wherever.
Of course, very far from the sea.
But we can create our own sea.
Building our sea, working with our sea, using materials, using cloth.
What do you see there that reminds you?
I mean, I think obviously it's joyful, really. It's playing and it's playful. And so, you know, they wanted to play and they want to be part of it. And of course, in that particular context, the children had English as a second language and needed translation, but it made you realize, you know, that.
So you had both languages working
together,
right?
Absolutely. We had translators, and obviously, I think made you realize that the materials that they touched, it's so important. And sometimes the whole feeling of joy in the room that they can resonate with if you're joyful.
So they create the sea, and then they become this is the mantle bit that starts to.
Yeah, and the mantle bit becomes, you know.
Where we imagined they were
divers and sometimes fisher people, and you just think, oh, and we'll dive under the water and we'll see what we can find.
And of course, they're finding fish, and they're catching fish, and they're eating fish and cooking fish. And the community of the classroom includes everybody, right?
Yes,
everybody
absolutely.
together.
Everybody together and finding things.
So here we are building a humanizing community through the fictionalized world. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
And you know, that's the light side of it. That's the wonderful side of it. And of course, we're always bringing in a little bite of the danger, and they did it. I love what you said about.
You know, things like, you know, what about the scary creatures, you know, the ones that might bite your leg off, or.
So it wasn't the little boy invented a crocodile?
Yeah, the crocodile and all these sort of things that frighten you. So it was all the excitement of play, really.
And rescuing each
other. And finding
all this stuff.
So finding sparkling things in the water,
and
something
this is
precious.
For several weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, this went on for quite a few weeks. And, you know, they have a special place in this beach area.
And these are children recently arrived.
Yeah.
Many of them don't speak much English, but through the dramatic inquiry work, they're dramatizing this work. They're connecting. Yeah. And they're belonging to a community that's very humanizing, that includes everybody. Caring, trusting, inclusive, collaborative community. These are humanizing values. That's the sort of community we're creating. You were creating, and then you came to like part 2, which I love.
Which is the finding of the baby, which obviously was, you know, it was. I mean, this is Dorothy's genius of planning, really. To be fair, it was a sheet. Obviously, it's a sheet they rolled up that they accepted was the baby, But the genius of it.
We didn't say about the baby. Tell us about it.
Oh, the baby. Well, in Dorothy's
So
influence
here,
again, it was about, what if we found a baby on the beach, washed up on a weathered crate, that it was left there with maybe some notes and ideas about where that baby came from. What if that happened? And that was something we introduced at this stage when they'd been fishing for a while. They'd invested in being divers and fishermen.
They'd use those shells.
And we used the shells. We created the special corner, and it was near there that we find this old crate, and there's a baby in there.
And there's the baby.
And there's the baby.
And everybody's been fishing for a hard day, been sleeping, and in comes the baby.
In comes the baby. And of course, to me, that's the genius of her planning, was that the bringing the baby in a sense, was drawing on what they knew, of course, because many of them, I think all of them really, would have had younger brothers and sisters and babies. But of course, 70% of these children had been on a journey, and maybe that whole idea of being nurtured, maybe there was a challenge for them there.
Everybody loves to be nurtured.
They all want to be nurtured, and obviously they might have been separated from parents as well, but they knew about babies. And I think, so these young people who came in, who were lost really, I would say, who must have felt lost, and Dorothy would recognize that. And now what we had here was a baby who was lost. So in a sense, for me, it was a turning point in my understanding of Dorothy's thinking, I think, to realize that what those people had, some people might say, oh, how terrible, how sad, we must help them. But no, use what's inside them, use what they have, and make that into something productive, because those children had such compassion for the baby. And the lostness of the baby, was
placed in relation to
their lostness.
And also to the community, togetherness, the belongingness that they'd created.
That they'd created. So
you didn't begin there.
No.
Because until, at least that's what I understand.
That's right. You didn't begin there, of course, because they'd already invested.
Now they were ready to deal with a really challenging problem.
And I just thought.
And of course, just to remind ourselves, that's just a girl holding a piece of cloth. The genius, of course, of dramatic imagination is that they see a baby like them.
Yes, of course.
Held by another human being who's caring for them.
Exactly.
And as soon as you introduce a problem, you introduce an inquiry possibility. And of course, what do you do with the baby? Well,
what do you do with the baby?
How do you hold it when it's crying? Is the first thing.
That's right. And of course, they know how to hold it.
And everybody's passing around the baby, and
and they would, they're just caring for this baby really, and bringing, I think, what they know to it. Bringing that they know how to look after baby.
So what else do you have to do with the baby? Well, what does it eat?
And that's right. And there was a couple of lads there who.
And these are the children who went that.
I think they were a bit more. They might have been engaged, but it's like how we translate that when we watch children. They were more going off on directions. And there's the teacher in us who want to keep them together.
And these children, these children, I've had this when children go off in the middle of something. What are you doing over there?
What are you doing over there?
And actually, they went away to bring back what they thought the baby would need to eat, which is a piece of pizza.
Yes, that's right, a piece of pizza,
a piece of cake,
and a piece of cake, and all these sorts of things coming in. And of course, I didn't think we had to tell them, well, you can't give the baby pizza. We can't give the baby a cake. It's too young.
Because you say yes. You say yes.
You say yes to everything.
Yes to whatever they be, as long as they're not destroying the work, which they weren't. They were an offer. So this then led to this. Well, what does a baby need to eat?
Exactly.
And we got into milk and all the other stuff, right? And that
they were learning how to negotiate with each other.
Right.
I'm sure it said in the box, wasn't there a letter? I'm sure there's something. I'm not sure, and it was like negotiation in play, really, with how can we care for the baby best.
And just to, I mean, of course, that's a constructed picture, but those are the children who are actually there. It's taken from a little DVD. But here's a white girl interacting with recently arrived Somali immigrant children who don't speak English. This is hugely significant. This is not, they haven't been whisked off to be force-fed English. Here they are using language, and of course, as we'll talk in a minute, they were reading. There was other things were in here as well. So, and then having established that, now you raise the stakes even more, because they look up we're in the middle of this. Oh, we know how to feed babies. We know how to, you know, look after them. And they look at, and this woman walks in, who is one of the teaching assistants,
Yes,
right?
and-
And she's
yeah.
walking in, and she says, yeah.
And she just says, "I've come for my baby."
And the children are going, what do you mean you've come for your baby?
Well, I left her for you to care for the baby. So thank you. I've come for my baby.
Well, we found a baby in a box. We didn't see you leave it anywhere. We've been looking after this baby.
It is my baby.
Which then raised the question, well, would you believe her? Would you just hand her over? And tell us about the girls and the boys and how they
I think the
responded.
girls tended to be more instinctively.
Here comes a
whatever.
mother asking
Yes.
for a baby. Let's give her the
Less.
baby.
I think they felt that she was the mother. I think
Yeah.
the boys were more suspicious and, you know, weren't sure really and said, look, I don't think, you know, there's things.
And you were helping them
Yes,
negotiate that,
of
not
course.
rush in to give her the baby. Well, should we trust her?
Yeah,
And how
should
do
we
know
trust her?
that?
Should
And
we
then
not trust her?
they went back and looked in the box again and the
Into
other
the
things.
crates.
Because do you have that the letter there?
Yeah, I have the letter, and it was a big scroll.
You've
like,
actually
it was
got
big,
this.
It was a big scroll like that, but I've written it down on this paper
Scroll
here.
that
And it's,
was actually big red. So here it is in English for these non-English,
Yes.
but of course they were translating it.
yeah.
And
And there were images and all sorts on the original
other
scroll.
things there. In the,
Because obviously we had to have pictorial English because
and in the
people
box
can
there
relate
was
to
a,
them.
what, was a doll.
there was
and
a doll, there was a storybook, there was a little
lots of things that a
box,
caring parent would have left.
Yes,
In a
a
box with the
rattle.
baby, you know.
a bottle,
Yeah.
a spoon, a comb, maybe the hair was starting to grow, you know, things that would indicate
And
this
they'd
baby.
all looked at these, sort of used them with the baby.
Mm.
They'd sung them a lullaby.
Yes,
They'd
yeah.
read to her. They'd talked to her.
Mm.
They'd belong. This baby was part of their community, and here's a woman
Yes.
coming in asking to take it away. So the
So they went-
clincher wasn't it? Do you want to read?
Well, they went back to the scroll, you know, and some of the words in the scroll I thought was significant was, tell no one that you had found my baby. It's a secret. Please hide him if anyone comes.
And they'd done that,
They've done that, all right.
and they did it
then-
when she came in. Some of them.
So this is this ring, she said in the box. This ring is my ring.
And on her hand is the same ring,
same ring.
that was in the box. And wasn't it one of those boys, the
Would
pizza boys or
recognise
something?
this.
Doesn't he go
Yes.
off and
This is my ring. I am the baby's mother. When I come, I will ask for my ring. So it was really a case of, well, we covered her ears for a bit. We listened, let's cover her ears. Let's hear what she says or what we think of her. And again, as I said, the boys were a bit reluctant. Well, she said something in the book. Let's have a look about the ring. Let's have a look about the ring. And it was the revelation that she hadn't asked for the ring, but he thought he'd recognize the ring that was very similar. So she came back.
so he goes off, finds the ring, brings it in,
Brings
shows it
it
to them.
and then
this
says,
is like-
wait until she asks for the ring.
Now that's dramatic.
It's dramatic.
With
Tiff.
5 and 6-year-olds, I mean, that's a moment out of trying to think of the ring in Shakespeare. There's, you know, it's there. So again, we love this quote of Dorothy's. We talk about it all the time, and here's an example of it: focusing on the minute particulars. A ring, a baby, so as to better understand people's humanity. The humanity of a mother, of looking after a baby, of not handing over a baby to somebody who just walks in and asks them for it. This is complex stuff for 5 and 6-year-olds. And it's all based in story. It's all about telling stories, creating stories, interpreting stories. She has a story to tell. There was a story on the scroll. The children's stories from where they've come from are being drawn on to make sense of this. The stories, of course, are being dramatized. They're being brought to life. And all of that is deepening our understanding
I
of
think
humanity.
so,
Right?
and very reflective of what Cecily said when she said, all drama is about exploring the implications of human events. And I thought that was a human event where the implications were fully explored with the children. As Cecily says again, it's with the children. It's they own the story.
And
Yeah.
when it's like one event after the other, not in some arbitrary
No.
structure, but in a very carefully aesthetically structured piece of dramatic art.
Mm.
We only touched on 2 or 3 events there, but one after the other. So we wanted to pick, serendipitously, 10 years later, Iona actually had in the back of her car this same letter, and she had driven up to meet me in Newcastle, where I had come over to set up. My intention was in 2020 to bring a study abroad course to St. John's School in Newcastle, which is one of the, like Woodrow and Pontebrennan in Wales and several other schools have used dramatic inquiry and Mantle in particular as a pedagogy that goes across the whole school. And serendipity, I was just thinking about what Claire was saying about the rolling roll. When we were there, the whole school was working on the First World War. I don't think they would have called it rolling roll, but there was clearly, they were working together. And we met with the teachers at lunchtime, and one of the teachers, who's like the deputy, said, "Oh, can you come in and help us?" And we're, "We haven't planned anything." He said, "No, it's all right, come in, we're in the middle of something." "Okay, well, if we're in the middle of something." So we hastily talked with him. I mean, it was literally 10 minutes.
It was
Thought, well, all right, we
yes.
can do something.
Yeah.
You know, so in we went, and the children showed us. Again, this is not them. These are pictures we made. But this is a well-known strategy. We use it over and over again of how children create. We're now, of course, we saw the younger children creating a beach. Here, they were creating a town. And they were in the midst of looking at the idea of housing refugees. And the teacher, very committed to social justice. Here we are in the northeast of England, very lots of rhetoric about we don't want immigrants. He really wanted to look at this. And so he's looking at the idea of refugees coming from Syria or wherever to be resettled. So this was the fictionalized town. And then we had town council and a mayor, and you know, they made the maps, and they were planning all of this to welcome people in. And at that point,
yes, well, at that point, I just remember a teacher introducing us and talking to the children about their work. I don't know why I did it really, but I got the stuff in the box, and
we talked about it.
We talked about it, and I thought
we're back to the minute particulars.
Yeah, we are back to that. But
so
also,
the children are talking at a very sort of abstract level of, oh, we have
That's
this
right.
plan, we're going to welcome refugees. So we thought, or you thought?
Well, I thought it seemed very evident to me from the way they worked together and they talked together that they were used to doing Mantle. They were. This was part of their way of working.
We knew we could jump into something.
We could just jump in, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to say, look, I'm going to imagine I'm a woman with a baby. I'm just going to be the woman with the baby. So I wrapped the shawl up, and I just.
So rather than we almost thought about taking a picture of Iona and putting it in here. We thought, no, because this is what the children saw. They could look at Iona holding a blanket, and they could see a person. As we said, oh, well, this is a photograph, and we imagined we had all these people. This is one of the people who wants to come to our community. So we look over there, and the girls are. The
girls can just immediately, you know, it was like, it's like Dorothy says, you bring a world into your classroom.
Like
you do.
Yeah.
You bring a world in. You're not in school anymore. There's somebody else here. There's another world. So, once you use a role of any kind.
So this is what if we had a baby, you know?
Yeah. And so the baby comes out.
And they start. We have the baby,
and they wanted to help, and they wanted to feed, and they wanted to hold, and they showed a lot of compassion. And Dorothy also said once, it's very rarely that children are not compassionate, which was very true of the previous example.
That was true, because I'm with the mayor.
I know you're in there.
And he's telling me in a very sort of, oh yes, we've got all these plans, everything. And the boys are around, it's basically boys and girls, and most of the girls are over with Iona. So I feel, they're not quite, well, let's do something to bring them together. So I used the strategy with these older children. I thought, oh, this will be interesting. So I said to them, I use this, you may know this, the Continuum Strategy, which is, you say on one end, you ask a question, you say, so should we, you know, welcome her into our community? If you agree with it, come over here and stand with Iona, who's representing the woman. And if you disagree, if you think we shouldn't bring her in, come on over here. And so you set up the continuum. Well, to my surprise, Two of the boys were quite far over on the, no, we shouldn't bring them in. And says, oh, that's interesting. Why are you standing over here? And Tom said, well, they probably have disease. And Neil said,
well, they can go somewhere else. They don't have to come here.
So we had some exchanges, which I would not call dialogue, because there wasn't a lot of listening and there wasn't any change. There wasn't much meaning making. They sort of restated it, and some of the girls sort of disagreed, some of the other. We weren't going anywhere with it. And I thought, okay, minute particulars, let's go back in time a bit and think. They knew that because they'd been studying and reading some stuff about it, they knew that in the abstract, they knew that refugees had come often by boat. And we looked at a book the teacher had at lunchtime. Did you bring it? Book. Yeah, illegal. It's lovely book.
Brilliant pictures in there.
So we had picked out a picture already, a couple of pictures. So, and we made up what the boat might have been like. I wonder what the boat was like that she maybe came on. And so we go over to the carpet and sit down and have a lot of fun getting on the boat and carrying our stuff on. And it's all very sort of playful and lighthearted as it needs to be, and then we wondered, well, what might happen on the boat? Somebody said, oh, there might be a storm. Oh, okay, we'll make a storm. And so we all made this. You can hear it. So that's actually children working on the Tempest. But it's the same, was the same thing. You know, they were creating a storm and having fun at it, falling off the boat and being in the boat. I mean, it was terrific. Whoops. Sorry, I'm trying to. And then we asked the, well, I said, I noticed some of you fell off the boat. Do you think everybody would have survived? And it goes very quiet, and some of them going, no. And I said, well, you know, you can choose that. If you want to imagine what it was like to not survive, to stay in the boat, to, you know, do you think they might have been rescued? And so then we're imagining, and then we put the picture up. And then we talked about possible separations and, you know, how, looking back where they came from, all that sort of stuff, about feeling the separation. So we've gone deeper and darker into it, and then put this up on LinkedIn. And the helicopter that would come to rescue them. And so we dramatized this, and this is, we're making the sound the helicopter, and, you know, and here they are. Again, this is from another example, but help, you know, they're lifting up, and Iona and I are there, and we're letting down, and then some of the kids are helping, and we're all, so the kids are moving around. They're pretending to be the people in the RAF and the people on the boat, people falling in the boat, people staying in the boat, people being lifted up. We moved around, and they took up multiple perspectives on this event. And those two boys who were the ones who, you know, were at the end there, they wanted to be rescued. They didn't want to stay in the boat, though they both pretended to fall in the water.
They did. I think they looked at it from the
they loved
different angles.
Anyway, they were, so anybody want to be rescued? But we said some weren't rescued, some weren't. But of course we all. So then we go back to the same question again, and Iona sets herself up again, holding the baby. Should we bring her into our community? Come on back to where we were standing. And everybody had moved down the continuum. So this is authentic assessment, by the way. You can't test for that, but you can show it visually, at least some sort of indication. So Tom, the little boy who'd originally said she might have a disease, I said, what do you think, Tom? And he said, well, and he repeated what he said, but he said it more sort of, I don't know, tentatively or whatever. But we then had a conversation about, well, could she have caught a disease on the boat? Remember?
Yeah.
And they said, and then you remember the little girl about.
And obviously he also said, you know, if you said to him, well, if she didn't have a disease, would you be prepared to accept her in, or would you welcome her here?
Yeah.
And I think that
And then they said, well,
negotiation-
how would we find that out? It's
yes,
like back to,
that's right. How would we find that
how
out?
would we find that out? And the little girl
Little girl
says,
said,
well,
well, my
my
mum
mum,
lives in the
Go on.
hospital and works in the hospital, and she, you know, she might be able to test him.
and then
might
we
be able to
just
check
for
it
just
out.
for just for a moment, we just imagine that we're going down to the
Mm.
hospital and bring the baby down and we have a test and everything. I'm going, oh, what was the result of the test?
Yeah.
Oh, doesn't have a
Yes,
disease.
right.
So then, Tom, what do you think we should do?
Mm.
Answer.
Mm. Well, you know,
You see what he
we
says
should,
up
yeah,
there?
we should find her a home. of
Right.
course.
So at that point, then we start. It's nearly over. It's
Mm.
nearly lunchtime,
Mm.
and the children are really into. So I'm saying, well, should we find her one? And they say, well, we should make it.
Mm.
And in this school, making something like that was actually in their school. Do you remember they had the school had purchased land there and had made, the children had worked on it, turning it into a football field.
Yes,
with
that's
a,
right.
with
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
children were involved in this. So the idea of making something like that
Mm.
was not fanciful for them at all.
Mm.
So they're all playing around, imagining that they're
Mm.
just showing you
And I think
it's all as if they're working it, you know.
Mm.
And
And when
the little boy Neil.
Yeah, he says, you know, I have a hammer. And I just think, you know, I think Dorothy say change worth having is slowly wrought. I think it comes from William Blake, and I'm probably misquoted it slightly, but it seems to me that's the seed of the beginning of change. I mean, this was just an afternoon and we don't expect dramatic change. But
No,
you just think there's a seed there. He says, I have a hammer.
And
From a boy who says we can't have her here, he's now saying I have a hammer. It's the beginning of change, I think, in a very, very small way.
And of course, I didn't mention, but I meant to, was he was ventriloquating discourses circulating at that time, to use that sort of academic thinking of it. People said things like they should go back and we shouldn't look, and he's just repeating that. He didn't have any malice in his voice, and the children weren't going, oh, why could you say that? It was just, no, he just said that. That's just part of what it is. But here there was some sort of a, you know, we were working together. He's experiencing what it's like to welcome someone in and to create a home together. And the last thing we said, I was just, as we're going, I said, what do you think? What should we put up? And one of the girls said, oh, we should put,
welcome home.
And off they go to lunch. And it was
nice.
quite a magical sort of experience. So here's Dorothy, I think, describing what's going on here.
I try to bring about a change, a widening of perspective in the life of the real person.
And this takes time. We slowly grow into understanding and change our perspectives ever so slightly, inch by inch.
And that hammer, I have a hammer, was that little inch I
by
thought.
So here we are, going beyond who you are. That's the transcending. We're just going to talk about this one quite briefly now.
Because
and the last one, these two commissions.
But we've chosen them because obviously they're in the same sort of subject area. And this was something where a school, and I was working in Dudley, knew about Dorothy's work, of course, and wanted me to work with them. The head teacher was on the Refugee Council. He was the chair. He had already welcomed newly arrived children some years back to his school.
So many of you would recognize something like this from a mantle approach, but this is actually from the Refugee Council, actually to the students. So this is a commission about the arrival of refugee children. And as you can see, they're being commissioned to create an exhibition.
That's right.
For the children.
You know, so, you know, we understand we understand that you are aware of this. So it's very much using what the children already know in their lives.
Sort of like in the first example we had, the children were newly arrived. In the second example, they had no connection with immigrant or refugee children. But in this case, the children
had welcomed these children and continue to welcome them.
So that what we saw in the first example had flowered in this school. So they had the expertise.
They had the expertise, and I think this is what we were drawing on. And in a sense, they were asking, there was another school, a neighbourly school, Caslon Primary School in Dudley, where they were about to receive newly arrived refugees in the coming year, and they wanted some help from this school.
And this really enlightened head, and who's
very enlightened, said, well, we need the children.
Use the children's
to be to help the teachers having the new arrival. So it was like a big shift in power, if you
So I
like.
just want to highlight the significance here of the purpose here, which runs through all of this work. Purpose is what gives you engagement. You're on a journey, you're navigating problems. These are real life problems. In the previous ones were real life problems, we were fictionalizing them, but here they were actual problems. What are we going to do in this school to be successful? And that's the commission.
They were preparing an exhibition and thinking, you know, and obviously we were drawing from their expertise, you know, what had they found helpful when they came to the school they were in?
Yeah.
How could this help another school? What were they? And I think they came up with three.
And there are three core ideas when you want to look back at it that they proposed.
They proposed that we needed.
And the first one was
to be able to talk with peers in your own language, which, you know, obviously is perhaps more commonplace. This is going back some time, and it was kind of a new idea perhaps at the time. But that's certainly one of them. And seeing friendly faces every day and feeling welcomed in whatever you're doing. And seeing images that you recognize from your lives outside school. So bringing your lives into the school to be part of it. So meshing the outside and the inside, if you like.
So those ideas were all taken and implemented in the school. So their work made a huge difference and was celebrated as such.
Yes. So that was a commission. And of course, people say, well, a commission is a real thing. Does that mean there's no drama? Well,
not at all.
Obviously not at all. There's, you know, we did things about the suitcase of a young person coming in and fictionalized how we would behave towards them and how we would treat them, how we would settle them. So there's all sorts of fictionalized material being looked at.
Also that they might feel that they would feel more at home, that they belong to the community, and that their stories would matter, that they could be told and heard and connected to everybody else. So here we are, belonging to a humanizing community, which everybody is included. And the last one, we're just going to make a very brief reference to it. This was a long commission that Iona worked on.
I worked on this in Swansea. It was a commission that was set up by my colleague Iona Hopkins from the university, where she was able to get this funding to invite young people to honour the work, the life of Richard Burton. And
these young people were, if you know this term, at risk of need, not in education, employment, or training. It's a very deficit view of young people, and they were all categorized as this, and this was the group.
Yes.
Two groups that Iona worked. It's significant because they've experienced not belonging. They've experienced their stories not being important. They've experienced having no sense of purpose in what's happening, and you know, transcending. I don't know. You failed the test, so you can't. So that's not to say that, because the people in the college were wonderful.
They were great.
Just fantastic.
Great, yeah.
They hadn't written them off at all.
No, they hadn't. They were very nurturing, and that helps obviously when you're working with people who can want to shift the culture for the young people there. And
what we just want to illustrate here, this whole idea of going, who are you walking in? If you're 16, 17 walking in, you're still, it's not like you're grown. We're always growing. So wherever you are, except the students, wherever they are, hope, you know, we're trying to foster. Now, the wonderful thing about the commission model and the mantle is that you've got the time to work on this, and you had,
well, it must have been about 15 months and even more than that. And the first my first session in the group with Iwan, and there was a young boy who had his head on the table. He was completely outside of the group, and that's the first picture. And in the last picture, here he is, the cameraman, making the film to honour the life of Richard Burton for the community, and which was shown at the theatre within the college.
And I was fortunate enough to be at the gala evening, and I couldn't believe, you know, these were students who had made this amazing movie and collaborated on it. Some of them worked as actors, writers. Carl was on the camera, and it was an amazing just time. And the more I've uncovered, talked with Iona about what happened on that, it's just
And of course, yeah. And again, change is slow and change takes time. And this minute particular in terms of Carl was when we were on a trip, and I recognized that first day when we were creating the study of Richard Burton, he started drawing. And the thing that he did seem to connect with was images. And I thought, here's an observer. He watches. It's so easy to write people off, isn't it, with their heads on the table. But he was looking at that.
And you offered him the camera.
I offered him when we went on a trip shortly after
that. You taking the camera?
I said, well, I've got a camera here, Carl. Would you like to?
Would you like?
Yeah,
would you like?
And I think that was kind of a pivotal moment, really. And that was a minute particular moment.
You could have missed it. Could have missed it.
Right? Is a minute.
And now, and he was student of the year.
He was student of the year,
because of that. And he then enrolled in the media course.
Following year,
Following year. A person who was literally in bed on the first day. And if it hadn't been for the woman from the college who went and knocked on the door and said, I'll take you.
Yeah.
So that sort of transcendence. And we just wanted to end with the principal of the college, who when I was there, he stood up to talk about how pleased he was this. And he had this collection of, and it was the statistics of how many students had stayed on this year as opposed to last year. And he gets into the middle of it and he just pauses and he does that. He rips it up. I mean, talk about dramatic moments, you know, and this is a quote because you interviewed him afterwards.
Yes. And
I wanted to get across that the statistics I have to submit about how many people stay on at school or college is not what life is about.
And of course, this project, he said in the interview I had with him, was life-changing for them because suddenly they're actually seeing what they are capable of and challenging their own I can't and turning it to, oh, I can.
You want to read more about that?
There's plenty more to read.
Humanizing Education with Dramatic Inquiries coming up next year, and Rutledge has a flyer and pre-order stuff, whatever you want. So
I don't know if there's time for any questions in chat, or if there are any questions in chat. People have just got exhausted with with looking at these things all day.
I don't know if we have.
Do we have any? Yeah.
So should we stop our screen share?
We can stop her. Go ahead, David. Yeah.
I can check if there's any questions in chat or any questions in the room here.
We have the invisible audience in the room again.
Yeah.
So 27 chats. Oh. Well, let's count up those numbers. That's how many did Cecily have? Gosh. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, 27. That means it was 27.
It was amazing to see you talking to each other in relation to dialogue.
Oh, right.
Thank you.
Like, oh.
We were working on it. Completely unscripted.
Completely unscripted. We are an unscripted pair. You arrived unscripted in my house last week.
Thank you for. Well, I know it felt like last week.
And I picked him up unprompted.
It looks like people have been having really interesting conversations in the chat while that's been going on.
That's nice.
Good.
Nice.
Well, we're happy to raise your raise questions, and thank you, David, for making this possible.
Yes.
So,
well, thank both of you. I mean, that was quite inspirational. It was great to have this dialogic encounter going on here as you talk through the work you've been doing.
Humanizing dialogue.
Humanizing dialogue.
Because I realized in the middle of this, you can have dehumanizing dialogue.
Yes.
You can do, we don't like them. We're the Celtic fringe, and they're all those foreigners. There's that Norwegian over there. That's dehumanizing dialogue. But drama is all about inclusive. We're all in this together. Everybody's in it together. And
could I make a suggestion on the inclusivity, just picking up from that, Brian? Could we maybe all switch on our cameras and all, so we can have a photograph together, because I think this is amazing.
Oh, fantastic. It'll be lovely.
So Anika will take
Can we do that?
Photograph.
Oh, you need to go to gallery share, don't we?
Yeah, we'll set it to gallery, but I think it'd be just lovely to see you all. You're all from all these different countries and all.
Yes, it's the mosaic.
It's beautiful to see you all.
It's the cultural mosaic. Transcultural. There we are. So
you don't have to be quiet.
Nikki. We've got We've got 3 holdouts,
We'll go into this.
2 holdouts.
Well, there's more than
Once you
our
get,
lineup.
yeah,
We're
come
just
on in.
getting
We
some
can
of
all
them.
be
Oh, we
here
can all be
together.
here
This is
together.
great.
Oh, that's
This
nice.
is great. Here we are.
Are we having a picture? Even?
Yeah, we're gonna.
How can
Oh,
we?
there's a. Oh, there we are. Hello. Oh, we lost 2.
Oh, there we are.
Oh, we lost 3. What's happening? There we go. 2. How do we do a screen share? How do we do that?
Is it recording?
Oh, there we go.